This is episode 4 of my working LEGO bowling alley. In my last episode, I worked on the pin distributor and the pin setter, so now it's able to lay all 10 pins onto the lane. In this video, we'll start out by expanding the lane, and then work on a couple fixes to that pin setter. So, let's begin. To start off the lane expansion, I need to expand the track which the bowling ball rolls on down below. So, with that track in place, I can now roll the ball through the lane, and it'll come out down that track. But now we need to use these clear panels to make the walls. And with those walls built up, we can now see that the ball goes down the lane and then right down the track. So let's continue building up these walls. With the addition of these plates and some bricks, it now has the strength to be able to support the lane and the gutters. So now let's add the lane. Once again, it has those tabs that lock into the base below, so that way the lane can't move around. While testing that new segment of lane, I realized a potential issue. When the balls get returned, they go down this track here, which doesn't have actual walls that are fully built up. This could lead to the pin lift getting jammed, since its hooks go right past it, and that's actually why I initially didn't have full walls, is because there wasn't much clearance. But removing the outer shell here, I can now add that full wall. And with it in place, you can now see that the bowling balls go right past. Now it's time to install the gutters. If the gutters are too low, the sweep wouldn't really be able to grab them. But if they're too high, then the bowling ball can hit the pins. But if it's right in the middle, then it's perfect. With the addition of some plates here, now we can install the gutters since they'll be at that proper height. With a quick test, we can see that it works. But the pin distributor from last episode is not working, so temporarily I'm going to remove a lot of the machine, so that way we can access that pin distributor and rebuild it. Currently, there is way too much tolerance in the pin distributor, and when I hold the motor still and then try to do that, it doesn't move as much. But when I release it, we can see it's the motor itself that allows for that tolerance. So I need to rip this apart pretty bad. Removing all those pieces allows a motor to go between these two beams, and if I attach a gear to that motor and gear racks beneath it, it can now move side to side without the tolerance that that last mechanism had. After attaching the pin dropper back on, it's kinda wobbly, so I'm gonna add some plates right here just to support that side, and now I can finally rebuild the machine back up, starting with the walls, then the pin sweep, and by reattaching that mechanism, I can now rewire all the motors and sensors. Before I do a full test of that, I need to fix a couple of the issues with the pin setter and how the pins get from the distributor into the pin setter. Starting off, the pin setter itself is a little crooked, and that makes for an uneven surface when it's dropping pins and picking them back up. But if I adjust the limit back here, that makes it much more level. So with the addition of that blue piece as the limit, I can now address the second problem. That being that the tops of the pins are getting hit by the pin setter now that it's level. To fix that, I'm going to add some Technic pieces at the bottom here that are a little rounder, so in case it does hit, it doesn't completely knock them over or jam. And with one quick fix to go, it's now time to make sure pins don't end up sideways. So the major problem here is the fact that there's a major gap between the pin rack and the pin setter, and those ramps help eliminate that. But after the first test, well, it did not go well at all. But after trying again, switching out the ramps for those pieces, and adding these pieces to keep the back pins from falling over, it now works really well. So it's finally time to test that new pin distributor. With the pin in place, it's now going to go all the way up to that top one and release it up there. Like the old system, after each pin, it then goes back to the chute and retrieves another. And after all 10 pins are in place, it finally releases all 10 of them into the pin setter. With the pin sweep down, it now begins that cycle of releasing the 10 pins. After releasing them from the upper rack into the pin setter now can go down and release them onto the lane. That's a problem. But with a minor adjustment, just having that pin setter go down a little further to help guide the pins onto the lane, it is now able to set down all 10 pins without knocking them over. And after the not so brief intermission of all of those fixes of the pin setter, we are back to the lane and gutters. Now it's time for the ball detection. Every time something passes that sensor, that light turns red. It's able to detect both gutters and if you bowl on the actual lane, but not with speed. So I tried a different sensor, this one being the ultrasonic sensor, but while it could detect with speed, it also just went all sorts of haywire. So I decided instead just to scrap those ideas and instead use the color sensor in the ball return lane itself. While the first sensor detected the ball, the one underneath did as well. So I'm just going to use that one, as it never misses. Finally, I'm running 2 cables through that section of the lane for the next episode where I finish the bowling alley. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.